with that, we move to the second part of our much awaited program. And, just to share, I was just digging up some numbers, and I didn't know that the women in the product sector is somewhere between a 15 to 20%, and then made me realize that how important programs such as these are going to be. And I would like to call out to the community to please join us as volunteers, and please do sign up for some of our programs. And I also think this particular program, that the initiative around women product managers is very close to our heart. And also I think it brings in a great piece of external exposure for women product managers from each of your organizations. And so please get them to participate and be part of this community as well that we are building. And for more details into that, and to take over the next part of it, there's the wonderful core committee who are leading this. I'd like to hand over to them, because I could do no justice to the passion and the amount of time that they put into this. So while I thank Atul, Ravi, Ram again, and have been guiding us on and spending so many hours with us, and along with the the hundreds of volunteers that we have, I want to take this opportunity to thank each one of them as well. And with that, I'll hand over to Lakshmi, and to take over the second part of the program, and over to you.
Thank you, Kritika. Thanks for driving such an insightful discussion here. Well, the wait is now over, and it's time for us to know what NWPC, NASSCOM Women Product Champions, is all about. Joining us here to present and introduce us to the NWPC initiative is Shalini Sankarshana. Shalini is an executive SVP at Broadridge Financials, heading international and asset management businesses. She is a respected member of the NASSCOM Product Council and lead of our product skills pillar, driving Indian software product ecosystem and pushing the product agenda to build world-class from India. Over to you, Shalini.
Thanks, Lakshmi. Welcome, everyone. What a phenomenal past hour it has been. I have just been spellbound on the opportunity that's out there for India. So I understand we are running a little bit late, but I will try to highlight what we are really looking to do as part of the NWPC initiative. I'm Shalini Sankarshana, truly excited to introduce to you all this extremely strategic initiative by NASSCOM. We're calling it NASSCOM Women Product Champions, and each word has been carefully curated. We wanted to be focused on championship because we believe each one of us are. And we heard in an earlier session on the momentous opportunity that's out there for the software product ecosystem. And the whole outlook of NWPC is to fill in a very, very important piece of the puzzle as part of accelerating the entire opportunity. Can we move? Yes. So if we look at, let's begin understanding the landscape in India. We had a lot of details on the growth ecosystem. A couple of highlights that I would like to talk to you all. Digital talent in India is, as you all know, digital talent is going to be the future of the world, and certainly for India. And what we are seeing is a very healthy increase in digital talent, both from an employment standpoint. As you can see, it's an 10% estimated growth. But from a talent itself, we're talking of 1 out of 3 employees being digitally skilled. I think that shows you the breadth and depth of what digitization has done in terms of talent development. While digital talent pool has been growing at a very healthy 25% CAGR, the demand-supply gap is continuing to be a pretty big one. India has one of the lowest demand-supply gaps, but it's still 21.1% and it's growing. Now, if you look at the last block, when we speak of women, especially in this whole digital talent part of it, we are talking of 36% women employees in tech industry. And when we double click on that, on women product leaders, women found companies, we are still in a fairly meager number of 10 to 15%. So there lies the opportunity. And that is where, that is one of our key drivers for driving this initiative. Shreya, can we move to the next slide, please? So while this data was out there, as part of launching this initiative, one of the things we wanted to understand was really voice of the customer. Here, the customer is all of us women who want to see what's the growth path for us. So when we looked at, we started talking about journeys and stories, and we really launched a campaign. Some of the common challenges continue to be about even building products and creating product leaders out of India. So common challenges would be proximity to client and market, and the perception and bias that is India product talent equivalent to what we see in the market and the world? Do we really have mature product organizations within each of our companies? So these became common challenges that we heard from a lot of women. But when we double clicked a bit more specific to women challenges, I think one that clearly stood out, and we heard about it from Ravi and Atul and Ram, was truly a lack of women role models, which means even when we are having successes, we're not celebrating it enough, we're not talking about it enough. Second is career mobility opportunities. Internal to organizations and externally, how do we make that easier and seamless? Third is capability and availability of the skills itself and platforms, so that we can continue to look for diversifying the talent. Apart from multiple biases that continues to stay. So these are some of the key challenges we heard from our folks, and I think NWPC is looking to address at least some of them while we'll continue to evolve the working society. Moving on, what we started looking at is if we see the key personas for product professionals, we looked at these 4 classifications. There could be many, but these are the 4 broad categories. We have Nutan, who is a QA engineer. She is very good in what she does and also has an understanding of stakeholders, has strong communication skills, and wants to transition into product management because she believes she can add a lot of value there. So this is a typical persona of not just QA, but a multi-talented individuals within an organization having some specific skill sets, transitioning into product management, into entry-level roles. This is a very, very important persona for us as we look at solving for. When we look at Jane, this is the second persona. She's a practicing product manager. She holds an MBA degree and traditionally comes from a business background. She is really looking for, while she's practicing as a PM, she needs mentorship from industry as she starts looking at how can she grow, not just herself, but also her products and portfolio. And what are the other new opportunities for her? So she is looking for mentorship. When we look at the different landscape altogether, Abhigya, she is a founder. So somebody who's already had a skill set and is now looking out to venture and create a new venture for herself. Or she could be a founder starting off straight on into the startup landscape. And at founders, and many of you who are founders in the audience understand, the challenges are very, very focused. You are optimizing every penny that you're funding and investing in. You need to understand every product feature that you put in. Is it truly MVP? How do you really drive prioritization? So Abhigya is looking for those inputs and really help and guidance, apart from probably help with go-to-market as she explores into newer markets. And there is Sahana, who is a senior in product. She's grown organically. She's part of a GCC firm. This is a typical persona we see for somebody who's grown in the organization. And she needs mentorship to grow into a CXO level. So if you look at it, essentially most of our women product needs fall into either of these categories. If I just share a few seconds of my own story, I've had the opportunity to build products and platforms for last 20 plus years for some of the largest financial houses across the globe. It's been a very interesting journey. Back when I began, I think in India, product management was not even a discipline, at least in financial services software sector, which is what I came from. And many of us have faced this, be it age or gender or region of origin, which is India. None of these were really in my corner. And we continue to deal some of those forces, but we have probably a lot more healthier working environments right now. The reason I'm sharing some of this is as part of my story. I think it's very key that we all share these stories. A lot of us share common challenges. And this is where mentorship and having those role models and people to look up to and celebrating successes becomes very key. And using position of our strength. So this is what NWPC is focusing on. Moving on to the next slide, please. We already spoke about these personas and their key challenges on what they look at. Some of them are looking to get into PM, some of them are practicing PMs looking for growth. Some of them need help, mentorship on making their products profitable. And with these challenges, we started looking at, can we move to 6? Yes. We looked at what are the key forces that are really helping drive this whole initiative, and why is it that we should be looking at this? When we reflected on that, we believe there are 4 key forces that are kind of coming together. One is digitization, and accelerating of digitization itself is generating so many new opportunities. So now demand is growing, right? Second force is workplace is getting democratized on across multiple things, not just gender, even location. Work from anywhere is becoming really, really important. In the last 3 years, we have probably done many roles out of India, which typically traditionally stay out there wherever the market is and the customer is. So we have shown that democratization of workplace and truly changing the working model is actually a reality. Talent demand versus supply, we already spoke about, it's ever increasing. And world-class products from India is something which is being now truly accelerated by push and support from bodies like NASSCOM, from the government itself, and a true product culture that's building within Indian organizations. Amongst all of this, a big piece of puzzle is we are leaving out a whole workforce out there who's very much can be a part of pushing this whole talent gap closer. So that is where NWPC comes into. Moving on. So I spoke clearly about why we think NASSCOM Women Product Champions this is the right time for us to look at this. And one of the USPs of why we want to do this and how we want to do this group is we want this to be exclusive. We want this to be powered by the industry. At the same time, we want this to be open for everyone who is looking to be part of the product journey. So that's the vision of NASSCOM, to drive women's journey into product management. Moving into the next one. So focusing on, we spoke of the 4 personas. And each of these personas, we spoke of skilling challenges, mentorship challenges, core connections challenges. And this is what we are looking to really focus and build. And when we look at, moving to the next slide, please, Shreya. I think this is probably the most important one for all of us to think through. As NWPC, when we enter into this group, this club, idea is to open it up into the entire ecosystem that is built by NASSCOM. Ecosystem into skilling, ecosystem into thought leadership, ecosystem into the policy advocacy, ecosystem of the startup club, ecosystem of go-to-market access, and ecosystem of GCCs and multiple other sectors, verticals that is being built out as a huge, massive ecosystem. And these engines truly drive multiple initiatives that are going on. And NWPC will become a horizontal engine which consumes and starts giving access to all the NWPC members to all these initiatives. So that is the power of what we are looking to do as part of NWPC, and a hugely massive radical vision. And looking forward to many of you helping us drive this movement. So let's move into the next slide. Quickly, let's talk about what are the 4 key things that we are focusing on. Personalized mentorship. Mentorship is also about, one is one-on-one mentorship, but second, it's about creating connections. Second is hard skills on what does product management mean at individual levels, and how do you build out on that skills, and how do we make these skills available as an industry certified set of skills for the entire diaspora is the second pillar. The third is the whole focus on networking. So networking and connections is, one is for us to work with our peers and learn from peers, but the other is, as if you're a founder, if you're a product leader, how do you build more exclusive connections into investors in sectors which are focused on women users, women markets. So that's a key focus as a third pillar. And fourth pillar is really giving access into the whole NASSCOM Product Skills Charter, which gives you access to multiple other pillars going on around it. So these are the four key focus areas. And if you look at this is the call for action. There is a website, there is a link, and inviting all of you, whoever is interested, either to be part of mentorship or to be part of the community. Please do connect with us. And if you see this, we have our Slack community, which already is a thriving product management community today, and we want to build it into one of the most open product channels. So welcome all of you, be part of the community, take advantage of this. And with this, I would love to give it back to Lakshmi on moving on to the next part of our agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shalini. Thank you very much. Next up is a panel discussion around celebrating women in technology who've shaped product evolution and innovation and opportunities ahead in this space. Our panelists today are Upasana Thakur, Shalini Sankarshana, moderated by Yogesh. Upasana Thakur is a co-founder and CEO of MobiKwik. She's seen the company through its 12-year journey from a startup to a unicorn with an IPO where the company has now turned profitable. She was felicitated by the President of India, being the first woman to lead a payment startup in India. She has always been passionate about creating an impact at the grassroots levels, which is what brought her back to India from the US in 2008 and to start MobiKwik, who then set out to revolutionize the fintech sector a decade ago, transforming payments here. An influential woman in the startup world, she's named as Forbes Asia's Women to Watch in 2016. She is an inspiration to all founders today. Our second panelist is Shalini. She leads NASSCOM Product Skills Pillar and council member. Her recent award, which is Innovator in Finance, by International Women Leadership Forum, speaks volumes about her experience. She's an established fintech and SaaS leader, focused on building global enterprise platforms and products with high-performing teams. She's built and run products and platforms for the world's largest banks, broker-dealers, regulators, asset managers, hedge funds, etc., in the financial services ecosystem. Yogesh, our moderator Yogesh, is VP Product Management of UHC Clinical at United Health Group, America's largest health insurance company and a Fortune 5 organization. Prior to this, he has led product management at Novell and Yahoo. Yogesh is an NASSCOM volunteer at Skill Development Pillar. All yours, Yogesh, for the panel.
Thanks, Lakshmi. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay, cool. Hey, so welcome Upasana, welcome Shalini, team that's listening in. It gives me great pleasure to bring such accomplished women leaders to you. What I'm going to do is, I have a few questions that I have prepared over here for our panel discussion today, but I would also highly encourage the audience to ask questions because this session is for you. So our hope, is to ask as many of your questions as possible. But I'm going to seed the discussion with a few questions. As I look at Upasana and I look at Shalini, I see two different personas kind of represented over here. One is on Upasana's side, I see like a founder, someone who's kind of come back to make a difference in India. And then I see Shalini, who's in the corporate world, trying to make a difference within what we call as corporate entrepreneurship, bringing in new ideas and so on. So let me start by asking a open-ended type of a question. So I'm going to start with Upasana. This question is for you, and then I'll ask Shalini you to add a few more thoughts on the topic. Question is, what is your advice for from your experience for young ladies and working moms to succeed in their product management career journey while balancing a healthy and happy life, as it pertains especially to democratization of our Indian workforce? So Upasana, let me start with you and then hand it to Shalini.
That's a loaded open-ended question, no?
Of course.
No, so I think what does it take to succeed doesn't take anything different from, what it takes men to succeed, which is, a savvy mind, empathy for the customer, and trying to design a product that solves the ultimate, business problem and the customer's need. With regard to being successful and having a good career as well as a successful, happy personal life, I think it's all a question of balance. And sometimes the balance ebbs on one side, sometimes the balance is on the other side. I can't ever think of a rule that works for me consistently. I've tried it several times. Once I thought that I'll always start my day at like 9 a.m. and I'll try to make sure that I am definitely off work by 7. And that day only something crazy will happen that, the day will never end. And so I've stopped making such rules. I think now I'm more about, going with the flow. Some days you're happy, having a good time, a longer fun time in the morning with the family. So, I make that happen. There are other days where you want to, start work early and be home on time. I think that there will always be lots of balls to juggle and lots of balls in the air. I think the main thing is not to take too much stress. For mothers, don't indulge in mom guilt. You have to spend quality time with your kids and your family, and you have to make sure you're there for all the important things. Those important, shows, sports event, parent-teacher meeting. But like everything else, like right now I have some play date that has been organized for my young kid because one of their classmates is going away. So, you have to choose things that you can skip. It's all a question of, the right mix of balance.
Thank you very much, Upasana. I think that was very insightful. Shalini, your thoughts?
First of all, I'm so happy to be on this panel with you, Upasana. Truly, truly great story. I absolutely agree with what you said just now. And thanks for choosing this event over the Playdate. So I think I will only add one, right? And this is something which I think I've read and heard from many senior women, and not necessarily from the industry, even senior women in the family. I think we all have 3 or 4 balls that we juggle. We have work, we have family, and we have our own passions. We want to have our own me time. We have to focus on health. So every day we can probably hold only one ball. Others will fall. They will probably be midway or they will fall. So I think accepting that reality, that's been the wisdom which it has helped me, kept me sane. And it's absolutely critical for us to focus on health. I think that's the one thing which we tend to ignore. I don't know if this is going to be the key for success, but it's certainly key for life. And health is physical, mental, emotional. We have got to give that due. I think that's something which we tend to ignore. I would just add those two to what Upasana said.
Thanks, Shalini. I think both of you are hitting upon a very important thing that's happening in our societies across the world, where the stress levels are so high. Overall, like we are seeing we're witnessing what's being called as the Great Resignation, where a lot of people are choosing to even exit their career. So thank you very much for those very insightful comments. I'm looking at the chat window here and I see like a few kudos coming and waiting for a few more questions from our audience over here. The next question that I have is in terms of advice to the men who are on the call. I was looking at the attendees and I do see quite a few men on this call, and hopefully a few of them will also be listening to the recording later. Let me start with Shalini yourself. How can men enable women to succeed in product management? Because as much as like there is a successful woman behind every man, I think there is also a successful man. There is a great man behind a successful woman too. So how do men become that great man? Like by enabling women, like in their lives. So Shalini, let me start with you.
Thanks, Yogesh. That's a very, very important question. Let me probably answer it in a couple of ways, right? If I just take my own story, right? And if I don't know by any means if I am successful, but whatever I think of a success, there have been several men who have helped sponsored, mentored, coached, supported, stood by. I don't think I would have been here without them. Be it at workplace, be it as my managers, leaders, supervisors, or seniors, or even my own peers, or a lot of times my team. I still remember when I had my baby and had just come out of my maternity and joined back, and I had this phenomenal role of strategy and business development, where I was building this operational risk strategy, and we're doing all exciting stuff. And I have this 3-month-old baby, right? So I think my team, which was probably most of them, my male colleagues, they stood by me. I mean, they knew how to support and where they need me versus where they don't. I think some of this comes intuitively, right? I think at the end of it all, at the core of it is respect, whether it's women or man. For me, I think I have to acknowledge that, and I believe we can do that very deliberately, irrespective of which gender or which region. I think makes a lot of difference. As professionals, I think we have an obligation and a duty and a responsibility, both as leaders, whether it's women or men, to make this a conscious effort. Because I think Ravi said it well in the previous panel. If we don't hit the critical mass in terms of the number of women in a certain team, in an organization, you will always be in a minority mode. So I think that is something which is a responsibility for all of us, whether it's men or women. As leaders, I think we need to do that as deliberated. So I would leave it at that.
Thanks, Shalini. And Upasna, before I hand it over to you to answer, or give us your thoughts on that topic, I would also like you to add, another angle to this, which is, I read, that you and your husband are co-founders of MobiKwik. So most of us, at least in the corporate world, we see this like, hey, if spouse is employed by this particular group, the other significant half is not expected to be in that group, work in a different group or in a different business unit within the company. Can you share a little bit about that experience as well? Like co-founding with your significant other.
So yeah, I mean, it was not, it is not what we wanted from the beginning. So, we actually started the company first and then got married a few years later. And even at the time of starting, I tried very hard to stay away from MobiKwik because of the same reasons. I wanted to strike out on my own and do a separate startup. But it so happened that I realized that the vision and the cause was much stronger. And I must say that there have been quite a few times where we have regretted that why did we mix our personal and professional lives? It just creates an additional level of stress, on your family. Because as founders, if there is something significantly bad happening, then it will impact both of you at the same time. And on the flip side, if there is something personally that is happening, then also it will impact both the founders at the same time. So it's difficult and it is not advisable. I would definitely not recommend it to people who are starting out now. But there is a upside also. The upside is that you have a spouse, a partner that understands you and your problems really well. And so there is a level of sympathy, empathy, patience, tolerance, and support that you get from your spouse, because they completely appreciate the types of challenges that you are, coping with. So, and it works both ways for men and women. So yeah, there are additional complications in working with your spouse. And I can tell you there are times, like I remember in our last office prior to COVID, which was a fairly large office setup, like a 33,000 square feet office. Both of our offices were on the completely opposite sides, so that, we would not have to bump into each other as much. And partitioning our roles so that, we are responsible as founders for completely different, areas. I think that has always been the case, because see, you have to appreciate that aside from the personal aspect, for people to be in leadership roles, they will obviously be, people with strong opinions and, want to get things done. And so you want to create a collaborative framework. Thankfully, we've added a third co-founder. So that has really helped, balance out things for us. And yeah, I mean, that's what I can say, that it's not easy, but there is also a lot of, joy, that comes with working with your spouse. So in a way, now we call MobiKwik as our first child, and our child is sort of our second child. That's sort of how we, treat this. And to keep things sane, we ensure that we will never ever hire anyone else from our families or friend circles, because bas do hi log kafi hai, like who are connected personally also. So that's sort of how we've done it so far.
It's truly connected workplace, huh, Upasna?
But I can tell you this, right from the beginning, we always travel separately, to work, never together. I hate traveling in the same car with my husband / co-founder, because then he will start his work discussions in the car itself. And I'll be like, well, I have my own thought process of what I'm going to do for the day. I have my own preference of music. So you please go separately. I don't want to go with you.
Yeah, I think many of us here on this call can relate to what you're narrating over here, Upasna, in terms of, like wanting some me time, right? Okay. Hey, so we have a couple of questions coming from the panel. I'm sorry, from the audience. Let me see if I can get a couple of those in as well. So I'm going to probably start with you, Upasna, on this one, right? The question, right, like I'm going to read it and kind of not, put it in my own words over here. The question being asked is, we are always juggling between, so many different activities. Should I do it? Should I not do it? In other words, it's always difficult to take that first step. How do you tackle with prioritization? So it's a question of, it looks like, prioritization. How do I prioritize for this day? How do you make your prioritization call? So maybe I'll start with you, Upasna.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a very good question. And, just from business perspective and also life perspective, I've always been a very focused person. So I realized that I don't want to do like 20 things and not be able to do them right. So it's important to me to, pick up fewer things, but from a business perspective, drive the outcome to the best possible, numbers, whatever it is, users, revenue, however you track success for that project. And from a personal perspective, if I pick up something, I want to make sure that, it goes to the final outcome that I want. So to that extent, I choose fewer things. So as an example, it's very popular currently for founders who have now been founders in India for the last 6 to 10 years to start becoming angel investors and invest in younger startups or mentor and all of those things. So I like to do that, but I've done it with very few, as an example, because I want to make sure that wherever I put my faith and my money in, I really do my best to help out that team. So I've not invested in like 10, 20 companies. I've only invested in 2, as an example. And there are a few that I'm helping these days as well. So similarly, from a social cause or a hobby perspective also, I pick up something that I really want to make an impact on. And I think a lot of this also comes from our personality and sort of cultural family values. So my father was very, very conscious about, helping people with their education or uplifting people, who are, let's say, not so doing so well economically, and helping them and their children get the right education, etc. So I think that one should, instead of going wide, I believe that one should put in the best quality effort towards a limited number of people or causes that one believes in. And whether they are causes, projects, or people, keep it small, but then make really massive impact in whatever those projects are, those causes are, or those people are that you would like to help.
Makes perfect sense, Upasna, in terms of making sure what we in the product management world these days call as peanut butter spreading. We don't want to peanut butter spread and do 20 things badly. Instead, pick 5 things and make sure you do them really well. And the question becomes, what are those 5 things? So Shalini, your thoughts on this?
I'll be quick on this. I think I genuinely love the framework of urgent versus important. whether it is work, whether it is home, because not everything which is urgent is important. Not everything which is important needs to be done urgently. So I think just having that sense of, okay, what can you get done now? And what should you get done now? I think that's kind of my barometer to help. And also sometimes I cheat that framework because sometimes I just need that high of a win. You want to do something small, accomplished, and you feel good about it. It gives you a positive adrenaline. I choose some of those, but if you really ask me, that urgent versus important really gives me a clear sense of, okay, if I don't do it today and it still works, I can do it tomorrow. Focus on this. But I agree with Upasana, focus comes back as the center of the whole activity.
Makes sense, Shalini. So what you're suggesting is like actively procrastinate as much as possible. As much as we may have heard, like don't procrastinate. Things that can be procrastinated, put them on hold, and eventually they sometimes solve themselves, right? Like you probably don't even need to intervene. That's a good thing. Hey, so another interesting question kind of coming in over here, which is, the question reads, what's your opinion on being a product manager as a consultant / freelancer? What do you think about the pros and cons? The way I read this, right, is should women re-entering the workforce consider, or women who are really struggling with time management, right, like with between all the other pressures that exist in their life, should they consider becoming a consultant or a freelancer rather than be stuck with all the corporate struggles? That's how I'm kind of reading it. So why don't we start with Shalini yourself on this one and then go over to Upasana?
It's certainly a very interesting idea and it does work, but the only practical realities in Indian organizations, freelancing and product consulting is still not as popular and as widely available. As leaders, it's certainly an avenue for us to think through. I do think organizations are doing policies about shorter days and smaller work days, which people can choose from. But the reality of large organizations is it's still very nascent. That's the only caution I would put there. But it certainly fits in the demands of flexibility. The second caution on a personal basis would be that you have to be really clear about outcomes, right? Because consulting and freelancing is something as a discipline has not yet reached the maturity that we have in the West, where you really can drive by outcomes. I think that's one part. If you as an individual are driving it, you have to drive the outcomes, clarity of the outcomes. Those would be my two sets of pointers.
Makes sense, Shalini. And Upasana, your thoughts on the topic?
On freelancing.
Freelancing, consulting, and I think more about women, like who are struggling to balance time. Should they consider entering workforce as a freelancer consultant?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I think the first goal is to re-enter the workforce. I think that is goal number one. Now, whether you want to enter with a consulting role, part-time role, full-time role, remote role, whatever it is, but goal number one should be I have to re-enter the workforce. Because, I've seen members in my own family, my own sister, between her two kids, she took a break after the first kid for 1.5 years. And then it was during those, horrifying Lehman times, and she lives in the US. And then she had a horrible time finding a job again after taking a 1.5 year break. And I think that at some point, intellectual stimulation is required for the brain. And if you have been a well-educated working woman, most women tend to get bored just being caretakers and homemakers. And so whatever time you can carve out, one should definitely try to create some value out of it, whether you work as a freelancer or as a consultant. I think in the last 1 or 2 years, because of COVID, a lot of remote opportunities, have come about, part-time remote opportunities also. I think the interesting thing here is to see what you really want. You want to dip your toes in and start with something small, or you want to, go in for directly a meaty challenge. I agree with Shalini that, despite COVID also, remote was still working out, but part-time or consulting, was not as popular. But for example, platforms like Shiro's and others in India have tried to create some impact there. So my number one, view there would be that whatever gives a woman professional comfort in getting started, getting her back to join the workforce is the most important thing. And then it can be a step by step. If you find an interesting part-time consulting role, take it. And if you do well, and if you think you can increase your time, then you can always move to, a full-time role or a larger role, so to speak. But getting started is most important. And, that whole, I think there is an initial nervousness. Now, you will not all believe a personal story here. So my son is 6 years old, but when he was born, just in the first couple of months, he had an infection due to which he landed in the neonatal ICU. And I was like completely stressed out. I was like, oh my God, well-educated, both parents, itna cleanliness, hand sanitizer, everything I've done. How can my child get the infection? I was just appalled. Like, I'm a terrible mother, this and that. So then I was on completely reading and on this project that I have to improve my kid's health no matter what. And so he was much better in a few days, and then quite healthy by the time he was 3-4 months old. But I was still hesitating about, coming back. At that time, maternity was not 6 months. I think it was 2.5 or 3 months, maybe. So I was struggling, and I must say that a little bit of a nudge is required, and, make sure you have supportive family members and friends. So in my case, my husband and my mother-in-law and my mother, they all literally pushed me out. They just start going to office, just go for 2 hours. So I started with 2 hours for the first week. Next week, it was 3 hours. And then, by the third week, I was already doing half days. And after the third week, I decided, okay, next month I will, try to make it full day. So that little bit of a nudge is sometimes required to get out of that, mommy zone. And so make sure that, there are people who know the real you and can sort of give you that little inspiration or nudge or encouragement that is required.
That was very insightful, Upasna. And, it's very, it's only when you hear, like the stories from folks like yourself, you realize, hey, it's, it takes a lot, to make it happen. But there are, like other folks in the community who have seen this, and any challenge that we see, right? Like the important attitude to keep in our mind is this too shall pass. Issues are temporary, but quitting is permanent, right? So we don't want to quit as much as we can avoid it. Makes perfect sense. Hey, so folks, like I'm realizing we are running out of time, right? We are in our last couple of minutes over here. So I do see like a few questions here, which I see, like coming in from folks like Pooja and others. Pooja, will make sure we get your questions, right? We'll get some responses back posted, like in our other communication channels that are out there. But let me kind of pass this on to closing thoughts over here. And if I can request, like Upasna and Shalini to share any closing thoughts you may have to the women and men who are listening to this panel discussion, what would your couple of words of advice be?
Upasna, over to you.
Over to you, Upasna. We'll start with you.
Cool. So see, I think that I'm not sure how many of you know, but I started my career as a product manager, first with the HSBC's auto finance division in the US, and then with PayPal, launching PayPal in several new countries. So I'm very much well aware of the product marketing manager and technical product manager, both roles. And in a way, I found those roles very interesting because they give you a sort of a mini CEO or a holistic role in terms of understanding and appreciating what the user wants, what the business wants, and how to position the product from all angles, including building the product to make it successful. I think that it's an amazing, launching pad for women from a profession perspective. And I do believe that it creates the right framework to evolve into business strategy or even, entrepreneurial stints because it gives you a very nice 360-degree angle. And you have to also collaborate with a lot of people, that is exactly what leadership is, collaborating with people and getting people to do things even though they don't report to you. I think that's the big learning I had. And from a women participation perspective, I would say that, I'm really big on inclusion and diversity. And to that extent, I'm very happy to see Shalini and so many other, women talking on the chat groups here about how they've come back or how they are making a difference. We have tried very hard here at MobiKwik, although we are not based in the Tech Hub Bangalore, we are based in Gurgaon. But I'm happy to tell you that we have about 30% or higher women participation overall in the 850 plus employees we have. And especially in our product engineering and UX functions, we have more than 40% women participation. So I'm trying to do my bit, and I would like all the women and the men who are on this session today to also take on the baton as volunteers, that we will make success happen in our careers, but we will also make inclusion a big part of our growth going forward. Thank you so much.
Fantastic, Upasna. Thanks.
I think from my end, I have a very, very positive outlook for this whole engagement of women in product and technology, Yogesh. So because the opportunity is huge, it's massive, and I don't think we have enough. I mean, there is no choice but to do this, right? So I love that kind of a conundrum when you get into that. So I think we are definitely being pushed in the right direction. It's ours to take and make it happen. So I'm a pretty strong believer in that, which is why I think I was very passionate even on the NWPC. Now, I think from the only other thing I would add is, while we are talking of women and product, it's beyond product managers in large organizations. We need more of Upasnas, we need more of Karthis, we need more of Sindhus. We need people who are women product leaders, seniors, building products for India across the world. So, I mean, that would be my aspiration for this whole engagement.
Absolutely. Hey, so thank you very much, Upasna and Shalini. That concludes our panel discussion. This was really very insightful, and folks who have shared your questions, hopefully we can pick that up in the next panel discussion that's kind of coming up. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Hey, thank you, everyone. Such a insightful and a power-packed discussion here. Thank you, Upasna, Shalini, and Yogesh. Our next session is a rapid fire with Malti on breaking into product management from non-tech background. Malti is a seasoned product and digital transformation leader with 2 decades of experience. Recently recognized as top 100 PMs in the country, she's launched and led several global enterprise consumer platform products across domains. She's extremely passionate about building product communities to evangelize product thinking mindset. She mentors product professionals and startups. She's also very active in women in technology space and has won several accolades for her contribution in diversity causes. She mentors women professionals and likes to write on various topics in her free time. Participants, be ready to key in your questions in the chat. This will be moderated by our NWPC volunteer, Priyanka. Priyanka has been a product manager for the past 3 years and has worked for tech unicorns like OYO. She moved from a business background into a PM role and hence makes a perfect fit to moderate the session for us today. Apart from problem solving, Priyanka plays soccer in her free time. Over to you, Priyanka.
Thanks.
And please answer the poll, if you can, that would be great. There is a poll question that you all can see in the screen here. Sorry, Priyanka, go ahead.
Sure. Welcome, everyone. Since this is a rapid fire round, I have noted down certain questions for Malti, and she will help us with her insights and experience. So Malti, my first question to you, which is one of the most common questions that we have seen across internet, especially for people who are trying to break into product management from a non-tech background. So is it really necessary to have an MBA degree to break into product management if you have a non-tech background? What is your take on this?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you, Priyanka, for moderating this. So yes, this is definitely a very, very common question which comes in. And as a baseline, I definitely would say that somebody who has studied business definitely make a good fit for a product management role. But having said that, it's not a baseline. right? Because I know several, outstanding product managers who do not come with an MBA background. So just to this thing, see, typically a product management function in different organizations for different kind of nature of segments of products is very differently organized in different organizations. Somewhere you will have a product manager also doubling up for a product marketing role, for example. It is very differently done, let's say, in a startup versus a enterprise organizations. And in fact, in my own experience, I think product management is one function where I have seen people coming from all diversity. You will have project managers coming in, you'll have designers coming in, you have engineering folks coming in as product managers. So I would say, given that product management gives you a scale to run a product and think it like a business where you get to discover what your customers are looking for. How do you solve that in the most optimized and way and probably the most reasonable cost and still give them a customer delight? So it gives you all the flavors which are needed because you're thinking about pricing, you're thinking about launching, you're thinking about marketing, you are constantly in the customer space, you're constantly looking for different ways to solve the customer problem. So coming from a business background definitely helps because you kind of understand the nuances of quickly doing it. But if you are really very specific in terms of you want to get into if you want to do an MBA, do it for the bigger span of things that gets you exposed while you're doing your MBA, right? It exposes you to a lot of different nuances. But if you're really particular about product management, then I would say identify what kind of product space that you want to be. Is it a B2B space, B2C space? Or what are some of the strengths that you bring onto the table? And look for probably those specific courses, look for those particular organizations, reformat your own experiences and strengths to see, how you can look for in terms of, and there is a lot that can be developed on the job by shadowing other product managers, learning from the communities. And I think the best way would be to do your own side hustle, build a scrappy product, just experience what does it take to build a product, deploy a small app into the app store. So I would say those should be some behavioral or live things that one should do. So only doing MBA is not the right thing.
Sure. And that's well articulated, Malti. I think this is one of the most commonly discussed topics, and you rightly put it across that business do have some perspective into product management. But if we can break our aspirations down and then work on those specific skill set, then definitely we can achieve stars in this journey. So Malti, just a follow-up question, and I see a bunch of questions on the chat window. When we're talking about skills, what according to you are some of the most transferable skills that someone from a non-tech background, if you have to pick, let's say, top 3 or top 4 based on your experiences, would be to break into a PM role into one of the FANG companies or one of the tech companies? So what will those transferable skills be?
Okay. See, I think one of the key skills for a PM is communication, because day in and day out, you are constantly communicating. So, being able to communicate effectively, whether it is verbally, whether it is written, that is one very key aspect. The second aspect is to be able to develop customer empathy, because unless you really understand the pain point that your customers are going through, that is and this has, of course, if you know technology, then definitely you have an advantage of having a better understanding of how you can solve it. But in terms of being a non-tech PM, so customer empathy is another thing. The third thing which a PM needs to do day in and day out is decision making. Whether I should do this, whether I should not do this, prioritization. So decision making is something which I would say is extremely important. If I have to pick another one, would be managing your stakeholders. Managing your stakeholders to say whether I should do this just because one big customer is asking me for it, just because my head of marketing is asking me to do it, or just because my customer support guy. So to be able to manage your stakeholders, whether it is with reasoning, whether it is with data, whether it is with the customer empathy, or with whatever is the right priority, that would be another very key factor. And probably if I can just pick up the top 5, I think the last one again, which would be tying a lot of these things together, because one of the key aspects that a product manager does is, removing bottlenecks for the team so that they're able to move further. Now, what does that mean is that typically when we start, there is only a limited amount of information we have. So converting that ambiguity into specifics, right, would be a very, very key skill, which is a very key skill and which is very transferable skill for a person to be a good PM. So while there could be a lot of many more skills, these are like the top 5 skills I would think about.
Sure. That does answer our question, Malti. Thank you once again for that. Since we are specifically discussing this topic of moving from a non-tech background into the PM industry, there are various kind of positions open for a PM. For example, a product marketing role, a consumer-facing PM, or a business-facing PM. So could you shed some light into, let's say, what a consumer-facing PM does versus what a business-facing PM does, and like if there is any difference that you can share across based on your experience?
Yeah, see, in terms of how the day-to-day role will pan out for a product manager, again, it is very contextual in terms of whether, for example, you are, let's say, working for a financial services organization, and that point of time business, which is your internal business teams, are actually your customers. Then how your day pans out, or some of the core deliverables that you have or the KPIs that you have would differ versus somebody, let's say, who's an e-commerce PM, because for them, probably they are doing their deployments on a daily basis. They are looking at data much more closely than what let's say a purely business-facing PM would be doing, right? So I do think, for example, if you are a consumer product, you are heavily dependent upon, let's say, how does the reviews looks like on social media. So you are constantly looking at data in a much bigger way than probably a B2B PM. You are looking at the smaller nuances of customer experience in terms of where do I get more, footfalls, or where do I get more eyeballs if I put the font color here versus if I do the designing here, right? So you get to do a lot much more, I would say, experimentation, dry tests, those kind of things, because you need to do the right kind of experience over there. So there is a lot more focus, I would say, on the UX part of it, the data part of it. The KPIs would be slightly different versus a business PM. It is much more about the business process. It is much more about accuracy. Let's say you are building a payroll system. You cannot compromise on the numbers, right? So your compliance, let's say if it is a regulatory product, so you have to lean on to the compliance. You have to lean on to the accuracy of these things. That doesn't mean that customer experience is less, but definitely if it is a reasonably good experience, but something which is really high on these compliance and other part, that becomes a priority. So I would say based on the domain or the sector that we are talking about, depending upon the B2B versus B2C, these are the nuances, which determines, suppose you're working on a brand new product versus you are working on a product which is a cash cow. You are probably talking about, okay, incrementally, how do I focus? Your focus is on user retention versus a brand new, you are probably making a new feature, you are building new experiments day in and day out. You're focusing much more on market research, user research. So it varies definitely on the place where you are in terms of your product life cycle.
Sure. I think and yes, like you rightly mentioned, it is more about analyzing data, communicating at the right time, ensuring that you understand your business, your consumer well. And if you're a consumer facing PM, you are concerned about the review versus right. If you are a business PM, you're very closely connected with the business stakeholder. So, which also sort of brings me to one of the last questions that I wanted to ask from you. So there have been, being a product manager in it essence means that you will have communication with the engineering team, right? So anyone who is trying to break into non-tech, coming from a non-tech background and breaking into product management, what would be your advice? What would you advise to them while they are, communicating with their engineers? Because sometimes the estimates that you give, right, can vary if you are not from a tech background. So just wanted to.
I definitely want to start with a punchline. See, you have to earn your credibility with your engineers, right? You have to earn that respect. And in order to do that, it is not a one-day effort. This is going to be a continuous effort. And I think building those relationships, building those collaborative aspect, and touch points is very, very important. I mean, while this is nothing to do with pure technical I'm talking about, but you need to be able to talk in a language that your engineers understand. But at the same time, I think one aspect which I feel many organizations are not very picky about it is that I think it is also important for engineers to get the customer empathy, that whatever they are building, how are their customers using that? What is the business? What is the kind of impact that they are creating for the customers? So I think that is one important aspect. See, a product manager can definitely be much more successful if they are kind of keeping up with the technology trends, if they are kind of keeping it up with the, what is latest happening, because that way you are able to have a very productive conversations with your engineering counterparts, right? So you can't shy away from saying, oh, I don't understand technology. While probably you are not expected to code or do the design reviews or the code reviews, you are definitely expected to be in a state where you can have a conversations that helps the engineers to figure out what is the best way for us to implement the design, right? So I would say take that effort to kind of do that. The other aspect where you can, one of the key things for a product manager, as much as planning and user research is important, the key aspect is your execution. The flawless or the better you are able to do your execution is as good as your product. So I would say the other very important aspect is that the best way you can get your engineering, the specifics, the best version of the prototypes, and loop them into the conversation of the initiative as early as possible. These are some of the things which definitely helps to partner with the engineering folks, much better, and for them to understand why they are doing it and to do that in the highest quality. So I would say the last thing, Priyanka, would be, while you are doing all of that, never compromise on quality, because a product which is bad on quality, never stand and cannot stand for itself, can never get that kind of feedback, stand for the excellence for the customer. So product quality is something, again, which needs to be constantly enforced.
Definitely, Malti. I think that was beautifully answered, and it does. I can relate it with my journey of moving from a non-tech background into the PM industry, and I hope the audience here can take some of these learnings that Malti has shared with us. With that, we just have a minute, and there are a bunch of questions, and I can only pick one. So I'll pick the latest one for you, Malti. It says it is from Rahul, and it says, how to ace that in interview with the engineering manager. So if you could just shed some light on that, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. So I think one of the very interesting, when your engineering leaders are assessing product managers, I think a few things that they really look forward is that how is this product manager going to complement what engineering has to offer, and they can deliver best of the product, and how correctly, or they are able to articulate their user stories, their epics in a very specific, so that it is delivered in high quality. I think the second very important aspect to crack is that some of the favorite questions I have seen my engineering counterparts ask is, how do you manage conflicts, right? How do you manage prioritization? So these are some of the, I think, communication, collaboration, conflict management, technical flair in terms of how are you able to comprehend what engineering is doing, to be able to strongly partner with them. I think these would be, and how well do you understand the space, right? I mean, especially if it is a specialist role, right? When it is a specific domain, those kind of things. I think these would be some of the things that I have strongly seen engineering counterparts assess product managers.
All right. I think thank you so much for your time, Malti, today. These were really insightful questions, and you've helped us a lot in at least answering some of those doubts. With this, I think we'll end this EMA, and I'll pass to Lakshmi or Shreya to take this forward. But thank you once again, Malti, for your insights.
Thank you, Priyanka, for hosting this, and happy to be here.
Thank you, Malti and Priyanka. Next up is another rapid fire chat on product design with Karthi Subbaraman, moderated by Atibi Mehra. To talk about product design, we have Karthi, who set out to change design landscape in India. She has 2 decades of experience with product development, product management, and product design. She's the founder of Experian that aims to build design and product and a no-code ecosystem for product makers. She's a visiting faculty at NID, MIT, and a chief instructor at Experian School, helping upcoming designers understand real-world problems. Moderating this is Atibi, who is the director of product management at Optum, part of United Health Group. Her background spans in product management, specifically in creating customer-facing digital experiences with companies such as Vodafone, Yahoo, where she was leading mobile product for APAC. She's worked closely with the startup ecosystem and is a speaker at various events and platforms, especially for women entrepreneurs. All yours, Atibi.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi and Karthi. Great to have you in this discussion. Lakshmi, I'm audible, right?
Yes, Atibi, you are.
Great. So Karthi, this is a really interesting topic for me personally, product design and product management. I personally really struggled with this in the very initial stages of my career to really understand the role of product management and the role of product design. These are very 2 different roles, but they are so critical for the success of a product. But there is also a very fine line between the 2. And my sense that I've gathered over the years is that a product designer gives a solution from the user's point of view, right? And gives the best experience possible. So the focus is really on understanding customer needs, pain points, and solving for those needs with an excellent interaction, navigation, intuitive user experiences, and the product designer is very closely involved with research, functional, visual design, usability testing. Whereas a product manager is someone who must understand the user need, but also understand industry, market, technology constraints, and most importantly, communicate and convince, and be a conduit between all these stakeholders, which means working very closely with the designers to explain the success metrics and allowing some form of creative freedom to designers. But this is my point of view. Would love to hear an alternative point of view, or anything that you would like to add, Karthi.
Absolutely, you have summed it up so very well, Atibi. So I always look at designers as we are Imagineers, right? We, in one room, we just come up and say, okay, that's the future and we need to do it. And the whole gang comes behind you, which means that's a ton of responsibility on our shoulders. That's how I really look at my responsibility. So I imagine and I make people see what I'm imagining, and then we together engineer, and then we kind of go and test it to the user and ask, did we engineer it correctly? Did we imagine it for you? And that's a very interesting way of looking at design, which means that we need to make sure you're able to guess. I mean, in nice words, you should be able to hypothesize, and you should be able to validate with evidence, and you keep doing it again and again and again. This Imagineering keeps happening. And that is, I think, is the role of a designer, to really go ahead and make sure it happens. And especially when you're working with really smart people and everybody in the room is asking, so what should we do next? And we are supposed to answer that question. So I think everything you said we have to do so that we are able to answer that question rationally, pragmatically. Sometimes it feels so intuitively right, but I can't go and say to my CEO that I intuitively feel you have to do this and you have to spend 5 million on me. That's not going to work, right? That's how I view it.
Yes. Yes, there's a fine balance of an intuition that also comes in, from a product design perspective, and and very interesting point that you meant in terms of iteration, experimentation, really understanding where we, if you've got the user experience right. Would love to hear your point of view on, many, I've heard various really senior leaders in the industry saying that, at very often the customer even does not know what they want.
Yep.
And, we need to give them a solution and hope that, and expect them to really like that. So what's your
Right.
point of view on how can, designers really envision a state which, the end user might not really know?
Right. And that's the beauty, right? So if you say, I'm hungry, I have told that I'm hungry, right? And you can go ahead and cook and do something to take care of that hunger. So this is a met need, which is articulated. And I'm hungry, but I don't want to cook now. And that's where something like a Swiggy comes to your mind immediately, and you're able to get it in like 45 minutes and you're done, right? But when Swiggy started, they didn't know that this is what the user wants. So it is an unmet and an unarticulated need. So for us to go ahead and figure this out, this non-obvious, internal needs and wants, we call it as desirability. So the need finding goes deep and figures out what is that they really want. So here is my hack on how to do that. If anything that makes the human being lazy and accomplished, do it, right? So it's very interesting to kind of look at the human being that way. So when you understand the human nature, we are pain avoiding, pleasure seeking, energy efficient creatures. So this triangle keeps me completely intact. So I keep looking for, how can I eliminate this for you? How can I not make you do something? How can I make you more lazy? Lazy alone is not okay. Lazy and accomplished, right? So you are lazy, but you're also getting things done. So that's the secret of finding what is unmet and unarticulated and it's not expressed, because you still don't know. For example, when you're wearing your AirPods, you did not know that when you go for a walking, people will come and say, hi, hello, how is your dog and all of that. Every time you have to take it out and put it back, half the song is gone. So when you just take it out and it just stops, when you put it back, it starts. That's delight, right? That's exactly what I wanted. So the human being can't really talk about it, but you as a designer, you understand that they're irritated with this, their needs and wants are not met, and you kind of go through that. So watching this human being closely and making them, more and more accomplished, I think that's the secret.
Yes, I think that that was very well said, because this is the crux of behavioral economics, right? When you're talking about human beings, they don't make the most rational choices. In fact, they're choices that makes their life, easy. So I do have some questions, Karthi. So a question that does pop up is, how do I really be a good designer as a product manager? Okay, so I think what this really means is, how do I really be a good designer, not being associated with, as a PM, what can I do to really work efficiently with the product designer?
Yeah, so this movie had a great impression on me, and I did not know that it will have a career impact, The Big Fat Greek Wedding. And she used to say that you might be the head of the family, but I'm the neck. So however I move, that's exactly how you will move. So in my opinion, design and product management are connected in the neck-head fashion. So you kind of move them in a certain direction and they may move accordingly. So what that does to the organization is you're able to present a few things and you're able to influence the engineering organization to see things in a certain light. So if you are doing the design part of it, then you are focusing heavily on the desirability aspects of the human being. But if you're on a product management perspective, you're wondering more about the product success. So your desirability is a seed of product success. So if you can have this neck-head relationship, it kind of works very well. In case you're trying to switch, just understand that you're either moving from head to the neck or neck to the head. So it kind of works like that.
Yeah. Yes.
I call it a husband-wife relationship because that's exactly how it works.
I know. And there's such a thin line, right? As a product manager, I used to really struggle with, where do I draw the line? Because as product designers, you need to give creative freedom, right? And at the same time, you have to so well articulate what you're trying to build, product goal, product vision. So in fact, one of the questions that has come up is, how do, what should I do as a product manager to really influence great design? Is there anything that maybe I can, do in terms of a training or, some kind of, skill set that I should build on? Because, how do we work well together?
Right. So it's good to understand how the human brain works more than how designers work, because the minute we understand how the human brain works, all of us have the same thing. So in that sense, your brain kind of goes through this divergent way of thinking, and then you need to come to a convergence, divergence, convergence. This keeps happening. The focus and the diffuse is very important. So as product managers, if you can figure out when we need to diverge, when we need to converge, that will be a big help for designers. Because if you are always trying to converge, like focus on, okay, workflow, this specifics, this 3 feet details, you never allow me to zoom out, like never go little crazy and come back. And when you don't do that, your ability to connect dots is actually very, very little. So when a product manager doesn't give this room, it's very hard to kind of come up with fantastic solutions. So if just knowing when to diverge, when to converge, if that room is given, and if you can participate in the process with designers, even better. Instead of one brain, there will be like 4 brains thinking in the same direction. And it kind of brings in that, I call it as neurodiversity. So when we are all bringing our thoughts together, diverging, not worrying about whether it is feasible or viable, or will we be able to ship it next week? Don't worry about all of that. I just think, right? If you call it a fire, it's not going to burn the building. So just go and imagine it and see if it is making sense. If the fire is too much, if the heat is too much, we will reduce it and make it like a matchstick. No problem. But at least you should be able to think through that. And that's a great, that would be a big help for all of us. It's not just for designers, but the whole organization will start thinking. And because we are human beings, right? All of us are. So we will be able to understand this subjectively. That is why it's human-centric design. We never call it as a dog-centric or a tiger-centric design, right? So it kind of helps us to kind of feel what is actually going on if we are involved in the process. If we keep anchoring ourselves towards deadlines and the tactical details, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. I think some key points, right? Inclusion. I think from both ends, as a product manager need to include a product design from the beginning, right? So they really understand what is the end vision, what is the product vision, what are we trying to do. At the same time, I think what I've also realized is very important for product managers to also explain what really is the measure of success, right? If you're building a product and I am accountable for a certain measure of success, during launch or, during enhancement, that's something that needs to be communicated to the designers as well.
Right. So I call it as an inside and an outside. For example, we take these 3 rings: desirability, viability, feasibility, and we say that the product manager sits in the center of it. If the product manager sits in the center of it, it's going to be a failure. Why? Because that's where the experience is lying. The product experience is there. The product manager should be outside so that he or she is able to see what is happening when we are discussing growth, viability, desirability. So that is when actually success can come. And this wrong definition keeps running around in our industry. And at the end of the day, we kind of, it needs to converge, and you kind of go into product experience and you kill it. So it would be great if we can come out and look at it overall and then make the decision.
Yes. So Karthi, we do have one question that I would like to take. We are, running out of time, but there is a question that has come from Pallavi. She says, would you design everything first before building?
Yes, you have to. In fact, I will exaggerate and say that how full is your trash can, that better your design is, which means design and throw it off. You need to keep, kind of negating the designs and say, this is not working, this is not working. So the number of iterations that you do really, really helps us to build better. In fact, I would say that don't touch writing any line of code before the actual design is done, because it is going to really help you to kind of build better. So the efficiency for the coding can be increased by the efficiency of the designers by just going through several iterations. You have to design everything before you build. Otherwise, it's going to be a disaster. That person is supposed to do your job as a designer. So they're a developer and a designer has 10 composite roles in one person, right? They're a user researcher, need finder, interaction designer, interface designer, value proposition, all of these things that developer is supposed to do, because I failed in my job. So
yes,
I would say.
Yeah. Though I do think at times, as product managers, there's, we struggle with, those timelines. This needs to be done at this stage. So it always becomes, and maybe one of the solutions is to look at whether we can actually break down, certain design processes and work in an agile fashion and take one module, build it, experiment, go for development, and then look at, the other phases.
I have a simple framework. I call it as a triangle and a circle framework. The triangle is a TRS, right? Your time, resource, and scope. And the circle is your product, because design never ends. Product never ends, and hence design never ends. Just because design never ends, we have to end it. We have to kind of give it a boundary. So now we have a timeline, we have a resource, we have a scope. So do what you can do within that triangle. I don't have to do more, but the problem is we don't define the triangle and we are trying to do everything, then we will burn out. So I would strongly suggest that let's go bit by bit and keep building over a period of time. It's a compounding exercise. That's how design should be seen. And all organizations which are successful actually do it that way.
Yes, yes. Great. Karthi, it was lovely meeting you. I think there was a lot of food for thought, a lot of examples that even I would take back, and I'm sure the audience, really enjoyed the session as well. Thank you so much for your time. Yes.
Pleasure. Thank you so much, Atibi and NASSCOM for hosting this. Lakshmi, Shreya, thank you so much. This has been wonderful to talk about product design in the product management aspects. That was fun.
Thank you, Karthi. So that's it for the day. Thanks for joining us at NWPC on the special day. Hope you enjoyed all our sessions. Do join our Slack community if you have not. Link is in this chat. This was me, Lakshmi. I manage servicing products at Mr. Cooper. Force behind this entire initiative was our NASSCOM team, Shreya Sharma, Nihal Pandya, Sunil Shekhawat, and Prashant Verma. Helped us, make this event a great success. And, and leading all of this was Shalini, who has helped us plan and execute this, event. And, we are going to try our best to make NWPC a champions platform for women products. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. On behalf of NASSCOM, I thank all of you. This is just the beginning to everything we had, we're envisaging. So thank you, everybody, let Shalini, Lakshmi, everybody, thank you so much, and look forward, we look forward to sharing more details with everybody here and getting you on our Slack channels and coming together to evangelize all the programs together. So yeah, so thank you again, everybody. And Shreya, Nehal, thank you so much for pulling all of this together. Thank you so much.